breakfast. Take talk, take talk, take talk, take talk, take talk, take talk, take talk with Matthew Dixon.
He loves that. I don't know. He's not a well woman. This Matthew Dickerson. How are you this morning?
It puts a smile on my face every time,
Yeah,
Richard, I
absolutely.
must admit.
CNN report that by the end of the decade, the only Volvo you'll be able to purchase will be
EV.
EV.
Yep.
Volvo. I don't know whether you saw it, but there's a very under-the-radar movie called The Space Between Us, which is about travel to Mars
Right.
and back, okay? In it, Gary Oldman, who's been around for a long time, drives a Volvo. It's completely autonomous.
Yep.
He just sleeps in the back seat. Now, with all that, and with what we're going, now you have several EVs because you're a multi-millionaire, but for the rest of us who will end up, now will that be the case, do you think, for all manufacturers by a certain time, we'll only be able to buy EVs?
They've made various announcements, various manufacturers
Yeah,
have
they
already
have.
made announcements to say that this will be the end of the line for ICE cars. This will be the time when we'll only go EVs. The mix will be whatever it might be. So you've talked about Volvo. They've already made an announcement now that they will have no new models coming out with an internal combustion engine ever. So they'll still sell out current models, but there'll be no new models coming
All
out.
right, for those who will then buy one of these internal combustion engines from Volvo that don't have the Naughty Dogs and the dice and the white bowling hat on the back shelf, what happens to mechanics? What happens to service dealers? What happens to providers of spare parts that actually fix these cars now? Will they all disappear as well?
Over time, yes, but obviously it takes time. You've got cars on the road that aren't all 1 year old. You've got cars on the road that are 10, 15, 20, 30 years old. So there'll be a market for that, but that will slowly diminish. So mechanics that can work on a petrol engine will slowly diminish because there'll be fewer available. But then they'll convert those skills. Those skills will be needed in other areas. And we've seen it throughout history. I mean, once upon a time, there were steam engines, and I'm sure there were steam engine mechanics, but we don't see too many steam
They
engine mechanics
morphed
now.
into the times and were able to become mechanics of the time.
That's exactly right. And
Is
that's
that what will happen this time?
I can see exactly the same thing happening as we find that we transition the devices that we have out there. Then the actual mechanics, the people that are needed to work on those things, will slowly change over time. I mean, IT technicians 50 years ago weren't needed because there wasn't really an IT market.
Yeah.
But again, those things change. You look at all the industries that exist now, all the occupations that exist now. You go back a decade, 2 decades, 3 decades. They're constantly changing.
And that brings to the point: when will humans become irrelevant?
Oh, we're almost there, Richard, aren't we? There are so many
Right,
devices
you know,
thinking for us.
Robots in Tokyo. You walk into this particular huge hotel, and there to greet you as a robot.
Yeah, and we're seeing in quarantine now. They used it during the US
Yes.
Open, for example. They're talking about using it in Victoria, where the main personnel in a quarantine motel won't be security guards,
No.
and obviously from bad behaviour in Victoria, maybe that's a good reason why they're not having security guards. But robots are going to be used in some of those. Well, they have been already, and they may be used in the future.
Absolutely.
So humans, what we're good at is being creative, is thinking. And what computers or robots, if you like, are good at is doing something that's repetitive, the same thing, very accurately. You think about a car manufacturing plant, speaking of cars, you've got humans in the old days used to weld those various bits together. And
Well,
the
they do
welds,
it. Mahindra, I talked to Robert Hansack. He's been overseas and seen the Mahindra cars. They're all robots.
exactly right.
They're built.
And robots for building a car are perfect because you want it to be exactly the same every time. You want that weld, you want to know that weld's going to be secure. So you want something like a robot to do the same thing over and over and over, not get it wrong, make sure it's spot on. So robots are perfect for that sort of thing. The same as a computer is great for storing data. But humans are great at being creative, at thinking of things.
Matt Dickerson, don't think about the cars and things in space and things of the future. Are you wearing jeans?
And now I'm wearing pants, slacks.
Right? I'm wearing jeans, right?
Right.
Now, these jeans were cut out by a robot.
Yep.
The plan was put into the robot's brain, if I can use that, and the machine does the repetitive work and cuts the jean out.
Yeah.
Puts the rivets in, it turns up the jeans, make the stitches. They're already being done now.
Yeah, that's right. And we see so much of that in manufacturing, and that's where it's really great from a repetitive perspective. It's a pretty boring job if your job was just to cut out the shape of a jean, for example, and sit there, and you're probably not going to get it spot on every time, and the jean, you
But a
buy one
robot
pair.
will.
Exactly right. So that's where robots are great,
Okay.
where it's that repetitive task, boring, if you like, but you want it to be accurate and spot on every single time.
What's the alarm bell then for kids going through schools? What should they be looking at as a career now if we're going to be in a robot world?
Well, the career that kids will look at when they're in year 12 today, even, the career that they will have for the next 5 years will probably be different in 10 years, in 15, it'll change. So the critical thing, I think, in kids and what they should be doing at the moment is making sure they've got the skills to think critically and make sure they've got the skills to adapt and change. It doesn't matter what the occupation is per se. I don't think I can say in 50 years' time that child will be working in this occupation. But what I can say is if they're able to be adaptable, if they're able to think critically is the really important part. Think critically about things, not just nod your head and say, yes, sir, no, sir, 3 bags full, sir. That's those kids that will be successful in the future because they'll be able to adapt to the world we live in.
So they'll be the creators and of material things, and the robots will be the carry-outer of those creations.
Exactly right. And if you think about it from a step back a bit, if you can have people that can do the thinking and the creating and then have all these robots to actually do the things that you need to do, then you can do more of it. So you can build more cars. If you want to get ICE cars off the road and have more EVs on there, well, robots will help in terms of that transition because you can actually do more with the robots than you can with humans.
Can you see trades disappearing?
I don't see trades disappearing, but they'll keep changing. I mean, for example, if you've got a blocked pipe, a plumber will come along and put a camera down and
send an electric eel in.
That's right, and go and do things rather than dig up the ground and pull those pipes out of the ground. So again, those plumbers that are successful are the ones that use the technology to help or enhance what they do rather than throw their hands in the air and say, oh, it's all too hard for me, I'll just give up. So, and that's the thing, it's about being adaptable. It's making sure that you take advantage of what's out there. And that's the big thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then going back to EVs, we better be prepared to trash our car, put it in landfill.
Well, again, I think there's some transitions happening. There's some great old cars that are being transitioned to EVs.
Well,
So
in 50 years from now, somebody will drive into a vintage car rally with a Volvo.
yeah, that's exactly right.
And everyone will go, oh, what's that?
That's
Not
right,
an EV.
but engines wear out. There's lots of moving parts in an engine, and often people go and replace their engine when it's got 300,000 or 400,000 kilometres on it. So instead of replacing it with another EV, there'll be people who will say, "Hey, come in and do a conversion over from an ICE engine to a EV."
Didn't we try that with gas in the boot? Everyone was racing to a service station to get a gas bottle in the boot.
Yeah, and that was still using the same petrol engine with some conversions, but this will be a complete change of the concept. And we have a meeting each month of electric vehicle owners and interested people each month.
You?
Yeah. So
Can you
it's a big
imagine?
meeting.
It'd be like going to an accountant's meeting.
we
All
sometimes
these nerds in one room.
We sometimes get 10 or 12 people to these
No
meetings.
way.
Yeah, so
What do you eat and drink?
Oh, we just go to the cultural centre because that's where the charges are and eat whatever's on the menu. But there is a guy there who's actually converted. He's got an old ute that he's converted to an EV, and he comes along, and sometimes we'll have a new person turn up. We'll go and pop the bonnet of that and show them what's under the bonnet. So there's people out there doing it already, and they're converting some old classics. I've seen people who have converted Porsches into a much more powerful Porsche by converting to an EV.
So the EVs will then go down in price, I'd imagine.
It's certainly, there's no doubt about it, that as battery production, that's the main cost of an EV at the moment, is the battery. As the battery production becomes higher and higher, then obviously the price will go lower and lower. And EVs in general, as we buy more of them across the world, then obviously, as always, production goes up, price goes down.
Yeah, you hope. But if Volvo and others are doing it, you can imagine the rest of the planet in manufacturing of vehicles will say, that's it, no more.
There is not a manufacturer in the world at the moment that doesn't have an EV strategy.
Is that good?
Yeah.
You think?
I think so, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The times they are changing.
They are.
Once written by a man, wasn't it? Yeah.
Breakfast is take talk with Matthew Dixon.